Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is baby. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or the ways that we can use this verb. The first way you're likely to encounter this verb is to treat someone as a baby. So here, I would say this frequently has kind of a negative meaning to it, particularly the older the individual becomes, right? So we generally think as someone ages, they're going to become more independent, in control of various decisions and actions. But, right, if we're still feeding them, catering to their every need, then we might use this verb to describe those actions. Now, a second way you might hear baby used can mean to pamper or be overprotective towards someone. This is a bit similar to that first definition. With this, again, I would say there's the idea of not letting someone become independent. A third way the verb baby gets used can mean to use or treat with care. Sometimes you'll hear this verb used to describe how someone is moving or working through an injury. So I might hear maybe someone has a wrist injury. They're babying the wrist, right? Trying to make sure they're not lifting or doing anything that could cause further injury. For now, you should know that baby is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms baby. The past tense and the participle form are going to require a small spelling change to spell this verb. So we have a verb that ends in the pattern of consonant and then a Y. So anytime we're adding a suffix that begins with a vowel letter and a vowel letter other than I, then we're going to drop the Y, add an I before we add that ed ending. So you can see there the spelling of the past tense and participle form of the verb is babied. Now our base verb, baby, ends in a voiced vowel sound. This means the ed ending is just going to make a D sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable to the verb when I say it. So the past tense and the participle forms of this verb should sound like this: babied, babied. Now, you might be happy to know no additional meanings, no phrasal verbs for us to study. So let's move on and do a little verb tense practice. Today, I thought we could review the present perfect and the simple future with will. Let's start with the present perfect. We can use this verb tense to talk about an action that occurred in the past. But what makes this a little different than just the simple past tense is that we're talking about an action that happened at an unknown point in the past. So could have happened last week, last month, maybe 10 years ago. It might not really matter. We can also use this verb tense to talk about actions that started in the past and continue into the present. This is a verb tense where we need to pay attention to our subject. If the subject is I, you, we, or they, use have and then the participle form of the verb. But if your subject is he, she, or it, you'll use has and then the participle form of the verb. Let's take a look at the affirmative or positive example. They've babied their son into his 20s, and I'm not sure he'll ever live alone. So the sentence, I would say, comes with a little bit of judgment, a little bit of criticism. So I think it would go back to our first definition. They have treated this person who is now an adult like a small child, like a baby. Now, if you want to make a negative present perfect sentence, again, pay attention to your subject. That way you know to use either have or has, but then use not before the participle form of the verb. Here's another example. She hasn't babied the classic car. She's put on more than 20,000 miles since it's been back on the road. As I looked for examples of this particular verb, I want you to know I saw it a lot when it was talking about classic cars or really fancy and nice cars. So we might go back to that third definition of like treating with care, trying to not put these valuable things in kind of difficult situations or overuse them, I think is generally what is meant by that. Now, let's look at making a yes or no question in the present perfect. To do this, you'll start with have or has, then you're going to have your subject, and then the participle form of the verb. Here's the last present perfect example. Has he babied the injury all week? You might hear this again with other sprains. I've heard it as people talk about like ankle sprains and other smaller, slight injuries. Okay. Now let's move on and talk about the simple future. Today we're going to make some sentences with will. This is one of 3 ways we can talk about future actions. Will is most common as people make predictions, things they think will happen in the future. It's also commonly used with offers and promises. You will hear people use it when they're discussing plans and maybe they're a little less certain about that plan taking place. But the nice thing about making sentences in the simple future with will is that our pattern stays the same no matter what your subject is. So in the affirmative, you'll see a subject, you'll see will, and then you'll see the base verb. So no special endings here. Let's take a look at an example. Nobody will baby you anymore. Okay. I've actually heard teachers use this, kind of preparing students to move up into higher levels of education. So elementary teachers might be telling middle school or junior high students this, and then middle school and junior high teachers are frequently telling their students who are getting ready to move into high school. So kind of preparing them, right? You're going to have to be more independent, more responsible. Now, let's look at making a negative sentence in the simple future with will. Again, we're going to follow the same pattern no matter what our subject is. So we'll have subject, will not, and then the base verb. Will not can be combined into the contraction won't, W-O-N''T. Here's an example sentence. This manager will not lower her expectation. She's kind and respectful, but she won't baby you. Okay. So this might be preparing someone for a new job, a new position within an organization, kind of setting expectations as to how their supervisor is going to interact with them. Finally, if you want to make a yes or no question in the simple future with will, start with that word. Start with that modal, then you're going to have your subject, and then the base verb. Here's our last example. Will you baby her forever? I've heard one parent say that to another as they kind of reflect on how they are raising their children. Okay. Now, let's move on and talk about some words that are related to our verb. And you're not going to be very surprised here, but our first word we'll discuss is the noun baby. The noun baby has so many different meanings. I think I've picked out about 7 for us to talk about today. So the first way you'll notice this noun, and I should note the noun has the exact same spelling, the exact same pronunciation, but the noun baby is frequently referring to a very young child. So somebody who's newly or recently born. Right? So you might imagine a friend has given birth, right? You go and visit, the friend says, do you want to hold the baby, right? So this new person. A second way to use the noun baby is to just refer to the youngest member of a family or even a group of people. So An example of this: my spouse is the baby of his family. He has 2 older siblings. He's the youngest. A third way you'll encounter the noun baby is to refer to a young or newly born animal. So you might hear somebody say, look at the baby chick. A fourth way to use the noun baby is to label someone really as a timid or a childish person. So sometimes people will use this to try and get someone to act or behave differently. You can see that in my example sentence here. Don't be a baby. The roller coaster will be fun, right? So imagine a group of people trying to get someone to do something and they're like, oh, no, that seems scary, right? So sometimes just that action of being called a baby will motivate someone to act a little bit differently. A fifth way to use the noun baby refers to one's particular responsibility, an achievement, or a concern. So an example of this: the project has been her baby. So could be a responsibility, a concern, but something maybe this person has been overseen and trying to see to completion. A sixth way to use the noun baby is to refer to something that you regard with affection, with familiarity. So again, I'm going to go back to that car example because I was really surprised. I'm not a car enthusiast, so I didn't think about it, but you will hear people describe or say that car is his baby. And so maybe that's a question. Is that car his baby? So something he loves deeply. Now, a seventh way you might hear baby used as a noun is really a term of endearment. So someone might use that to describe another person with whom they are having some kind of romantic relationship. So maybe you've noticed that in dialogue in TV shows or movies. You'll also notice it frequently in songs. So an example of that, the song Heartbreak Hotel by Elvis begins, well, since my baby left me, right? So what they're talking about there is a significant other, a person with whom he was in a relationship with. Now, the word baby can also be used as an adjective. The adjective baby has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation as our verb and as our noun. It can also have a couple different meanings. Sometimes when we use baby, we might be talking something that, or describing something that is comparatively small or immature. Okay, so an example of how you might hear that used: they've always wanted to own a baby grand piano. Right? So grand pianos are quite large. A baby grand is going to be smaller. Another way to think of that, here in the United States, many people buy baby carrots. Right? So they're generally rather small, especially in comparison to what we think of as a regular carrot. Now, another way to use baby can, of course, mean of or relating to an extremely young child. So you might hear something like, oh, what a cute or adorable baby bonnet, right? So this is going to be like a head covering for a small child. Well, I hope this video has helped you better understand this verb. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.